Ooh, look at all this bread. Let's get some buns. Hey, this is Glenn, and welcome back. And to those of you that this is your first time here, thanks for coming. Now, if you watched our last video, we mentioned that we're kind of changing our feeding regimen up a little bit. And we talk about it there, how we can give 30% of our food can be bread and pastries. We taped these guys out after the video last week, and these are our two feeder pigs. They don't have names. We don't want to get attached to them. That's advice I give you. Don't make pets out of your feeders. So we're going to tape these guys out. It's been exactly a week since our last video. And that's going to tell me how much they're gaining in a week, and I can break it down per day about how much weight they've gained. See if I need to increase my feed a little bit, or if we're good where we're at. I'll give them some grain. They already ate the bread, and it don't look like it, but I've got a concrete slab there that they eat off of. I need to clean it off. They've got it pretty dirty. So what you're going to need is a cloth tape measure, right, where you can get the measurement in inches. And I'm going to see if they'll let me do this. He's usually a little easier. So you're going to start at where the ears are, at the base of the ears. He'll stay still. To the base of the tail. We're going to take that measurement, that's the length, and then we're going to take a girth measurement. That's right behind the shoulders, around the chest. Now this is just going to be an estimate of weight. Width. So the red feeder pig is 37.5 long by 32 width or girth. That's actually what they call the heart measurement. And what we would do is this heart measurement or girth measurement, we're going to multiply by itself. When we get that number, then we'll multiply it by the 37.5, then divide by 400. Online there's a handy little calculator. You can just type in pig measurement calculator and then just enter your numbers. Makes it a lot quicker. Let's see what we get. Okay, with the magic of YouTube, we're back. So these calculations come out to roughly 96 pounds. Last week he weighed 85 pounds. That's an 11-pound difference. Divided by 7 days is a 1.5 pound daily weight gain, which is perfect. I'm going to see if we can tape this white one. He doesn't like it as much. Let's see what he's weighed. See what his weight gains have been. Let's see if he'll let us do this. He's not going to stand still for me. He's 37.5 inches long too. Well, you have to get up here closer. He's not wanting me to do it. Come on, guy. And my tape twisted. Come on. $33. So see what that comes to. So I actually have my book here. So last week the red one was 85. The white spotted was 89. So today he's 96, he's 102. Now he's got a 1.5 pound average daily weight gain. He's got a 1.8. Now here's what I'll explain to you. This may not be 100% accurate. I've kind of watched them and looking at the pigs, I don't think it's that far off. But let me explain to you. It only takes into account the average width. If you take the heart by the length, it's only taking into account the average width if that pig was growing out according to what the average market hog would grow out to be. But like we talked in the previous video, this guy right here is wider in the shoulders and the back end than this guy is. He's a little bit taller, but he's definitely wider at the shoulders. So I don't know if you can tell in the video, but he's pretty much on his heart measurement right there behind the shoulders. He's pretty much level from his shoulders to his heart girth. This guy's shoulders stick out, and so his heart girth is quite a bit narrower than his shoulders. So I'm going to guess this guy probably weighs close to the same as this one. It's just an average. You really don't know unless you can run them across a scale. So it can be a little bit deceptive, but if I take the same measurement every week, then it can tell me my approximate weight gain. Now, if one of them is gaining a lot of muscle weighs more than fat, so that pig's liable to weigh more than what you think it does. But it's a good indication for me that what I'm doing so far in the first week, I had been feeding them the bread for a week prior to that. So it's actually been 2 weeks and they're gaining great. So today what I want to talk to you about is how do you feed your pigs to get good growth rate? Now that's a topic of conversation, and you hear a lot of things on YouTube that just aren't accurate. I'm just going to put it that way. They're just not accurate. If you're trying to raise a pig up quickly, to where you don't have them on your place for a long time, you want to get good quality meat, and you don't want to have any more invested into that pig than you have to. Now, people are going to tell you that feeding them grain is just too expensive, you can't do it. Now, you got to think, from weaning, you're only going to have this pig for 5 or 6 months. You can usually figure it on 3 to 4 pounds of good quality feed per pound of pork that you're going to get. So if you set a goal on when you want to butcher these pigs, then you can calculate how much feed that you're going to need. Now, it'd be hard for me to calculate for you because I don't know what type of pigs, and it may take you a month or so longer than what it would depending on the breed that you're raising. So you want to make sure that you have a good quality feed. Don't be fooled by you can just throw in vegetables and stuff like that. If you feed a pig only vegetables and table scraps, the vegetables and fruits, they're going to get fat on them, of course. I mean, a pig's going to grow if he's got something that he can grow on. He just won't grow as good. And the fat fed on just vegetables and stuff alone is going to be a soft fat. So you've got to be careful how many vegetables and stuff that you give them if they're not getting any grain. That's something that people don't talk about. You want a good carcass if you're going to eat the meat. If you're raising feeder pigs for yourself, I mean, your goal basically is to feed your family. And we're going to get into the differences between a homestead and a farmstead and a farm, because I think people are getting those things confused. And there's a lot of information on YouTube that get frustrating for the average person that just wants to raise a couple of hogs. All right, it's not that complicated. You can do that. So we feed a mix of corn, and it's got some soybean meal in it. I know a lot of people on YouTube, oh, the soybean, look, you know, this is a well-known feed and it does really good, and the pig carcasses are great. And that feed also has a vitamin pack in it, and 16% feed for these guys is what they get. until close to finish out, and then we'll drop it back some. And we wouldn't have to. We would just have to limit how much they get at the end on 16%. So let's go back to the fruits and vegetables, all right? So there's a misconceptions that pigs could eat anything. I was talking to Chris from Homesteading the Hard Way, and we talk, you know, fairly regularly about hogs. We have a lot of the same ideas. He's well, you know, a lot more versed in hogs than I am probably. He's probably forgotten more than I'll ever know. But we talk because we get confused on some of these fads and stuff, and what it is that makes people want to do them. And the only thing we can figure, it's just a culture deal. It's what people are selling to you because they've got 1 million subscribers or something. If you're wanting to grow out a feeder pig and feed one out, then you need a more traditional hog. You know, you need a Duroc, you know, a Poland China, you know, a Chester White, a Hampshire, even a Yorkshire would be good. Hereford, we've got some Herefords here. And a lot of that just depends on how far back the lineage goes. They all have been proven to produce good quality meat and grow at a rate that you don't have to feed them out for a long, long time. If you're going with some of these little fad pigs, they're smaller. People say, oh, you're gonna save so much money because they don't eat as much, they don't get as big. But that's not really true, because it takes you so long to feed them out. You're still spending the same amount of money to feed them, and maybe even more. These pigs, 5 to 6 months from weaning, they're gonna be butchered. If you've got, let's say, a cooney, it may take you a year to a year and a half to feed it out. Now you figure that you've got that pig anywhere from 6 months to a year longer than you would have these. Of course, they're smaller, but you have to feed something that much longer. If you're just looking for, you know, meat for your family, which is what homesteading's about. You know, everything now about homesteading on YouTube is about how much money can you make. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong. Of course, I hope someone can make money on their homestead, but technically it's going to push you into a farmstead or a farm type deal. The traditional homestead were poor people out there just trying to survive. They were raising the stuff that they could raise on their property, you know, either making part or all of their food. Anyway, we'll get into that in another video. Y'all stay tuned for that. We're going to talk about the feed, right? So the 30% bred that we're feeding is not completely replacing the grain. We're just pulling back some of the grain and giving them the bread, the carbohydrates, the sugars, the stuff like that that's in the bread. Doesn't replace so much of the grain that they can't put on weight. And that's our experiment, is that we want to see what we can do to cut feed costs. So you want to cut feed costs, but you don't want to replace all the grain. In order to get one fed out and fed out quickly, you need to make sure you have some grain. And the type of feed that I feed isn't necessarily have to be the type of feed that you feed. You know, you can experiment, find a good quality feed. You don't want to feed them just junk. Now, why did the old timers feed them scraps? I've had someone tell me, so, well, my grandpa just threw them whatever he had. Well, that's because a lot of times our grandparents and our great-grandparents didn't have money for anything else. Now, I think it's a misconception sometimes that that's all that the old timers gave them. Now, I'll just tell you this. When I was a kid, the most popular thing to feed a hog was wheat shorts. And they would get a lot of protein and stuff and fiber and stuff from the wheat shorts. And you would mix it with water, and then whatever vegetables and stuff you had left out of the garden, and you would slop your pigs. Now, that's what you would do. You would mix up wheat shorts. Well, they're not really available anymore, and they've come up with feeds that are way better than what wheat shorts were. I wouldn't mind having a few wheat shorts, not to feed it to them solely, but that's what we do. That's what we fed them when we were kids. They got a lot of table scraps and stuff. It took us a little longer to feed them out than what it does on this grain diet and stuff. The feeding regimen on these guys, so these guys right here, the rule of thumb I go by, and this can be adjusted according to the pig. If you notice that you've got just way too much waste, then you're probably overfeeding them. Or they are not eating the right type things. Sorry, the sun's coming in this morning. But kind of the rule of thumb we go on is per month of age is a pound of feed, up to 6 pounds. Now, when they get on up, if you're going to push them past that 5 or 6 month mark, you may have to give them a little bit more. We're really wanting them to fill out. We're wanting some fat on them. We're wanting it marbled, so we don't want to hold back feed too much on them. But that's a good rule of thumb. Let's see, what else can we cover about feed? Look, we've gotten into a problem with a lot of YouTube homestead stuff. A lot of these people are new, and they're just grabbing from here and grabbing from there, and they're just putting stuff out there. What's entertaining video, right? Well, I know my videos aren't that entertaining. We're just trying to be informative. Like, I want people to be able to do this. I want people to realize you don't have to have a lot of room. You don't have to have a lot of acreage. You don't have to have all these things just to raise a pig up for yourself. You can buy feed from pretty much any of the farm and ranch stores. If the pigs will eat it fine, then it should grow them fine, but you're gonna spend more money. Your best idea for feeding your pig is to find someone that sells feed in bulk. And they have these things that are called super sacks, and it can be loaded in the back of a pickup truck or onto a small trailer. And you can transfer it out of those sacks into, waterproof containers with just a bucket. Doesn't take that long, 20 or 30 minutes of your time. But if you could buy, a half ton, 1,000 pounds, it'll easily feed out your hog and probably have some feed left over at the end. And you can probably do that, depending on your area, anywhere from $180 to $250, depending on the area you're in. So, somewhere around $200, $220 on average, you're going to be able to buy feed to feed this guy up. So if you figure the cost of your feed, for if you butcher it yourself, you can be, $300, range of having a whole hog if you learn to butcher it yourself. It doesn't take big facilities and stuff. We've got a 100-quart ice chest that we can lay bags of ice in, and once we divide our hog up into thirds, we can lay them in there. I kind of bird walk there. So that's basically what it is about feed. You don't want to give them just all junk food. You don't want to feed them like Grandpa did. Grandpa did it because he had to. Grandpa had a family he had to feed. He had to give them whatever he had. He had no money. Now, if you're in a situation where maybe you don't have money, you say, look, I just absolutely cannot afford to buy feed, then you're going to have to get creative. I would suggest, especially during the summer, if you buy a feeder pig in the spring and you feed them through the summer, make sure you can stay cool. Then you can butcher them in the fall. Might be a good option for you, because then a lot of people have gardens, and a lot of produce stores and stuff will have things. You just talk to people and see if you can get some fruits and stuff. Talk to the bread guy, see if you can get some bread. You want to make sure that you figure out some way that you can give them some supplemental vitamins and stuff that they need for good growth and health. But you could absolutely do it. You can buy a little bit of corn and soak it along with that stuff and soften it up, and you might be able to find some of that's pretty cheap certain times of the year. They'll have deer corn, or someone will have extra corn out of their garden. If it's dried hard corn, you can put it in a barrel with some water and you can soak it and soften it up enough where they can eat it good. Don't give them a lot of it, but you can give them a little bit along with that other stuff, and you'll probably grow out a pretty decent hog. It just might take you a little longer. So if you got a little bit of time on your hands, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Do the absolute best you can. It's not rocket science. Don't let all these different conflicting videos and everything fool you. It's not rocket science. All right, you keep them healthy. Don't get them too fat. You don't want them overly fatty, but don't starve them to death either. These pigs are plenty happy. They've got most of that feed cleaned up, and I kind of like feeding these feeder pigs on this concrete because pigs get bored pretty easy. Anything that'll make you fat will make a pig fat, as Chris will say. If it'll put weight on you, it'll put weight on a pig. Another thing about the vegetables, I just want to touch on here at the end of the video, is that if you raised your kid on nothing but vegetables, he's not going to gain much weight, is he? It takes a lot longer for him to get fat. He'd have to eat a lot of vegetables to put on weight unless he's predispositioned to be big boned. so these pigs are the same way. They have to have something with some fat content, and you got to have something with protein in it in order to gain weight. Don't give them meat, especially any raw meat. I mean, you know, no meat at all is best for sure. But you got to think, if you accidentally gave them some contaminated meat, they can catch whatever that is. You know, E. coli and stuff like that, salmonella stuff that you have in your meats, and you don't want to kill your pig because you poison them. They can also get parasites. So if you feed them meat that even, you know, the USDA certified stuff that gets recalled a lot, which I'm not saying we don't eat any meat from the store. When we run out, we buy meat, or we eat deer or fish mostly, but we'll buy some. It's about saving money and getting by, right? That's really what homesteading's about, is how can I feed my family and not starve to death? You know, the moral high ground stuff of everything that people talks about, yeah, we want to be healthy and stuff like that, but that's not the reality sometimes of what you see on YouTube or what homesteading's about feeding your pigs and stuff, and shame on you if you gave them this, and shame on you if you gave them that. Look, I'm just telling you, raise them as healthy as you can. Get them to gain the weight. You don't want to have a feeder pig on your farm any longer than you have to. The goal is to get food. That's the goal, all right? It doesn't have to be the most lush pasture lands ever. Most people don't have room for that. All right, what we're looking for is good growth rate, a good carcass, something we don't have to feed forever, and we want to be able to feed them for the least cost, but we also want to be smart about how we do it. I don't want to feed mine something that's going to give them really soft fat, or that's going to take forever for them to feed out because it doesn't have the quality. I want them to be healthy, I want them to be fat, I want them to be just a really good pig. Do y'all want to close this video out? What do you think about it? What about you? Huh? Not much to say? All right, guys. Well, I hope that is at least a little bit informative. If you have any questions, just ask me. I may not have all the answers, and I'll just tell you right now I don't. You know, like I said, we're experimenting on our feed too. So if you have any questions, just put them in the comments. If you have any comments, put them in the comments. You know, I don't take offense easily. If you have some constructive criticism and you see something that you don't like that I do, you know, I'm willing to listen to it. Doesn't mean I'll follow it, but I'll listen to it. You know, that's the only way we can really better ourselves is advice from one another. I appreciate all the support, all the nice comments. Stick with us. We'll be back.